Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Players Club show. I'm your host, Levi Valentine, at Levi_Valentine on Twitter. Joining me is my co-host, Brent Hikes. Follow him at Brent Hikes, Heikes on Twitter. Brent, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day. Got football news to talk about.
Yeah,
Doesn't get any better than that.
yeah. Pretty hot day today too. Was it hot in Kansas City?
It was like
Was it
83, not bad.
83?
Yeah.
You got in
Should
the
we hop
90s.
right
Go ahead.
90s, huh?
Yeah, 90s today at Grand Island.
I will pass on that. I think it's going to be like later tomorrow. But should we hop right into the headlines?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right. So the Seattle Seahawks and running back Carlos Hyde reached an agreement on a one-year deal on Friday, May 22nd, per ESPN's Adam Schefter. Hyde, who turns 30 in September, scored 6 touchdowns and ran for a career-best 1,070 yards on 245 carries for the Houston Texans last season. He played in all 16 games for the second time in his career. Brent, what does this mean for that Seattle backfield?
Um, I think it gives them a little insurance with Rashad Penny injury and even the Chris Carson injury that happened late last year. I think Carson injured his hip last year, and Penny, it sounds like he'll be on the pup list at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, they need another running back, and they got it. And in my opinion, I was kind of high on DJ Dallas. I thought he might get some playing time behind Carson, but now not so much. What are your thoughts?
So, do you view Carson as the one to own still in this backfield?
I do. I think
Okay.
he's still the one to own out of this backfield.
I think you're probably right. Unfortunately, I just drafted Rashad Penny and Carlos Hyde, and now most recently I took Travis Homer in our startup
Okay.
league that we're doing. And the reason I did that was prior to his injury in week 14, Rashad Penny was starting to get a significant share of touches in this
Mm-hmm.
backfield. The Seahawks had their bye in week 11 last year, and in week 12, Penny had 14 rushes for 129 yards, led that backfield in carries and yards, while Carson had 8 for 26. And then in week 13, it went a little back to more what you had seen prior to that last year. But Penny still got a significant number of carries at 15 for 74 yards. However, Carson had 23 carries for 102 yards as the lead. But you were seeing it become more of a true timeshare as opposed to Chris Carson being the one and then Rashad Penny being a change of pace. And so I'm expecting maybe when Rashad Penny comes back, it'll be really interesting to see. Maybe this year he doesn't get fully up to speed, but next year I think he could be the lead in that backfield. For this year, I think they saw what happened at the end of last year when you're bringing in Marshawn Lynch for a playoff run. That is not ideal. And so I think this was more of an insurance policy than anything. But I do think there is a chance that Carlos Hyde gets significant carries. We all know that Chris Carson has a history of fumbling issues.
Yeah.
And if Pete Carroll gets frustrated with that, I could easily see Carlos Hyde getting put in there and getting a lot of carries.
Yeah, Carson led the league in fumbles last year. Lost 3 of them, had 6 total. I do think the last couple years they have been at least kind of looking for Carson's replacement with drafting Rashad Penny so high, getting DJ Dallas in the 4th round. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it unfolds. But I
Yeah.
do think Carson is the guy to own right now. So if you're drafting him, if you're looking at the Seattle running back, I would say the first guy to draft out of that group would be Carson. But honestly, I'd probably stay away.
Really?
So
Even with all the volume they get there in Seattle, they love to run the ball. You're not touching it, huh?
I mean, I can also see Hyde had a good year last year. I can see Hyde stealing a little some, and I did not realize Travis Homer averaged 6.3 yards per carry last year.
Yeah.
So they got a lot back there, but
Yeah.
that's kind of why I'm staying out of it.
Yeah. Homer didn't get many attempts, but when they were thin and they needed him, he was able to come through. He only had 18 attempts on the year. Did catch 11 passes, though.
Mm-hmm.
And as you
And
mentioned, they drafted DJ Dallas in the 4th round this year. So they've got a lot of options in this backfield, to say the least.
And I'm assuming those 18 carries were just in the regular season. I don't think that's including his touches in the playoffs.
You are correct.
Okay.
So yeah, both two backs who both had 1,000 yards last year in one backfield. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. We had one other big piece of news that came out today, breaking news. So Justyn Ross, the standout receiver for the Clemson Tigers, the national runner-up last year, is having surgery later this week. Clemson Tigers head coach Dabo Swinney told reporters Monday that receiver Justyn Ross would need to undergo spinal surgery for congenital fusion and is expected to miss the entire 2020 season. And that's according to Ralph Russo of the Associated Press and Pete DeMello of Yahoo Sports. And they discovered this, Brent, after he missed time in March because of stinger symptoms. It was their last practice before all of the COVID issues came up, and they stopped practicing and thought he just had a stinger, but they took some x-rays and found the issue he's had since birth.
It's sad. Got a feel for him. I do know they have some pretty good recruits behind him that they don't have very much experience. They have Amari Rogers. He has a lot of experience, but that's the only receiver coming back that has a lot of experience for them. This obviously hurts Trevor Lawrence too. I don't think it'll affect his draft position at all. I still think he's the number one guy that you take in that draft. But that's awful that this is possible career threatening for Justyn Ross. He was a very good player. In DLF, they have him number 7 overall, Devy player in their ADP. That's awful. I just feel bad for him. What are your thoughts?
Very sad. There's a good chance we've seen him play his last down of football at Clemson, and probably potentially his last down of football ever if he isn't able to come back from this injury, which Dabo Swinney said he hasn't heard of anybody ever being able to do that, but they are optimistic that maybe Justyn Ross can be the first. I sure hope he can. It'll be a real challenge, but he's eligible for the draft next year, and he'll have a decision to make after sitting out this year if he is able to come back and play, whether he wants to go back to Clemson or try to go to the NFL. You mentioned he was the number 7 overall Devy player. He's the number 4 2021 wide receiver in ADP right now behind Jamar Chase, Rondale Moore, and Rashad Bateman. So certainly a huge impact on the Devy world for those of you who have him on your roster. And those of you who are looking forward to rookie drafts next year, he was probably going to be a pretty high pick. Kuiper had him number 18 prospect overall, number 5 receiver, and McShay had him as the number 12 prospect and the number 3 receiver in next year's class. So a huge loss for that draft class if he is not able to come back and play football. But certainly wish him all the best with the surgery, and hopefully he can make full recovery, and if not get back to football, at least lead a normal life.
I agree. Do you think they might lean on ETN more often because of this, because of their lack of experience with the receivers?
I don't know. I think they're very fortunate that Ngata and Ladson were freshmen last year and not this year, because they do have a lot of talent in that room, but they don't have a lot of experience, and without having spring practice and with potentially limited preseason camp to get those players reps and make sure that they all know the offense and everything. That's a huge difference having sophomores or redshirt freshmen potentially. I'm not sure what their redshirt status was last year, but that makes a huge difference in just being able to execute the offense the way they want to. And I think they'll be okay. Maybe they run a little bit more, but I don't think it'll be drastic.
Yeah, I agree. They also lose T. Higgins. He was their leading receiver last year. Or actually, Ross was. T. Higgins was the second leading receiver, reception-wise. But so they lose their top two receivers, and it'll be interesting to see it play out. But I agree with you. I think they'll be fine. That's important that they got a little experience. Ngata and Ladson, they got that little experience last year. So I think having that will help out quite a bit.
Definitely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Clemson losing both of their top wide receivers, as you mentioned. So our next segment, we're going to do a rookie mock draft. So we're going to do the first round tonight. I was gracious enough to give Brent the first pick because we all know age comes before beauty. It's going to be a standard single quarterback league that we're doing this mock draft for, PPR scoring, and no tight end premium or anything like that, just pretty simple, basic, standard scoring model. So, Brent, who is going to be the first pick in this rookie mock draft?
Easy one for me. Very easy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Wow.
I think it's, especially in this type of format, when it's not a super flex, he's on the right team. He plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. His quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. His head coach is Andy Reid. I see a lot of comparisons to Brian Westbrook. Brian Westbrook was a great Philadelphia Eagles running back maybe about 15 years ago. And if you look at Westbrook's stats, I just remember he was an amazing fantasy player, especially in PPR. And I know the first time I saw that comparison to Brian Westbrook, I had to go check to see how many catches Brian Westbrook got at Philadelphia. And he had 90 catches in 1 year for Philadelphia. Right there is just 90 points for him. That's awesome. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire can get somewhat close to that, it's a no-brainer to me. I mean, Edwards-Helaire, he might not get 100 rushing yards or 1,000 rushing yards throughout the year. But I do think if you add in the receiving, he can get well over 1,000 with plenty of receptions, throwing a few touchdowns here and there. I think he's an easy choice for pick number 1.
Wow. I think you bring up a lot of good points. I think it's very close between him and Taylor. I don't think it's quite as easy of a pick as you apparently do. But I agree with you. There's a lot to like with him in Kansas City, certainly. He had a decent 40 time of 4.6, so he's good speed, not great. He has a lot of burst, though, with a 89th percentile, 128.7 burst score. And so you don't need to be the absolute best athlete if you're operating in that Kansas City offense and getting volume to score a lot of fantasy points because you're going to get opportunity for a lot of touchdowns. He's a great receiver. We saw that last year in the LSU offense. He'll have a pretty, I think, seamless transition from a high-octane LSU offense to a high-octane Kansas City offense. And we've seen what Damian Williams was able to do in that offense, particularly in the last 2 postseasons. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire has the opportunity to do that as well, maybe all year long. He will have to compete with Damian Williams a little bit short term. It'll be interesting to see if Clyde takes all of the work or if they do split some, but certainly the opportunity is there in a dynasty league, especially for Clyde. He's set up to have a really nice career.
Number 2. Who do you got?
Number 2. Easy. It's easy. It's Jonathan Taylor, and I would take him number 1. So you let me get my number 1 player at number 2, which I'm hoping is what happens in the program as well, because I traded up for the number 2 pick there. Jonathan Taylor has everything you could ask for in a running back. Good draft capital, being the ninth pick in the second round overall to the Colts, and it's got that prototypical size you're looking for, 5'10", 226. Feature back size, able to handle a full workload as he demonstrated at Wisconsin over the past 3 years. A ton of carries, over 2,000 yards from scrimmage each year. A 4.3940 at 226 pounds is impressive. When you've got production like his and an athletic profile to match, so that's 98th percentile for running backs with that 40 time at that size. You don't see that very often. And so I think he's probably, in my opinion, the best pure running back prospect to come out since Saquon Barkley. With that, he's got agility, 11.25 agility score, 66th percentile. Everything you could ask for in a running back, except maybe he's an okay receiver. He's not a great receiver like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's not a weapon necessarily in the receiving game like Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be. But he can catch the ball enough to be serviceable and be a true 3-down back. And that's all I think you're going to need out of him, because running behind that line in Indianapolis, he is going to be able to get a lot of yards before contact. And really, Quentin Nelson is a standout guard in the league, and just that inside run game behind Quentin Nelson is going to be lethal with Jonathan Taylor back there. So he's an easy pick for me here at number 2.
You have some good points. You do, but it's still not enough to sway me.
Not enough?
Not enough. But maybe if this was not a PPR league, or maybe a half-point PPR, you can maybe talk me into it. I do agree. Jonathan Taylor is probably the best overall actual running back in this draft. He was great at Wisconsin. He's big, like you said, 226, and he can run a 4.39. You don't see that very often. So he is an easy number 2 for me. The way I look at this draft, there's a tier 1, and it's just those 2 guys in that top tier. Then there's a middle tier, and then there's a bottom tier. But these 2, the top 2 of this rookie draft is pretty easy. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of it goes, because honestly, it could be kind of a toss-up for me and a lot of people. So
I agree there is a top tier with those 2. I am surprised you're calling it a tier of those 2, since it was so easy for you, Brent. So easy to pick Clyde Edwards-Helaire number 1. I'm surprised you would let lowly Jonathan Taylor into that tier with Clyde.
Well, I can't have tiers with one player.
I would not say that it would be much of a tier, but I think you can make an argument for who I have next on my board, and we'll see if he's who you take at number 3. So let's hear the pick.
All right. Number 3 for me, I'm going with J.K. Dobbins, Baltimore Ravens. He's not as good as a running back as Jonathan Taylor. I do like the situation that he's in. Not a lot for this year, but if we're talking dynasty, that's why I got him 3. Mark Ingram's still there. He'll be there probably just for this year. He has to compete for carries with him. But I do think he's easily above Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. I don't think it'll be any problem for him to pass those guys up. But just him being on the Ravens, once again, this is a great fit. I looked at a great fit at pick number 1, and I see another great fit at pick number 3. So that's why I'm picking J.K. Dobbins at number 3.
You made the right pick. My argument for putting Dobbins in a tier by himself is I think there's a path to him being the overall running back 1 in fantasy after next year when Mark Ingram is gone. Mark Ingram's in a contract year. He will probably take some of the carries this year, if not be the lead back. But I think Dobbins will certainly have a role. And then next year, once Ingram is out of there, I think you see Dobbins get the feature back role next to Lamar Jackson, with Lamar Jackson's rushing ability and passing ability, frankly, as we saw in this last year when he won the MVP. You have him freezing linebackers on those zone read type plays. You have him running himself, and you have him able to pass potentially a little bit to Dobbins. He'll probably be more inclined to run himself than pass to Dobbins on the swing routes and things out of the backfield. But Dobbins is in a perfect offense where they want to run the ball. They have a good line, and you have Lamar Jackson freezing the linebackers, opening up wide running lanes on the interior. So I think that's my argument for putting him in a tier by himself, as there is the opportunity there after next year for him to become a running back 1 in fantasy, if not the running back 1. He didn't do a lot of testing at the combine. The only thing he did was bench press. But we know he's a tremendous athlete, because coming out of high school at the Nike Spark camps, he ran a 4.44 40, a 4.09 20-yard shuttle, 43-inch vertical jump, and he had the best Spark rating of any player in his class coming out of high school. So tremendous athlete. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it at the combine, but I have no doubt that he hasn't lost any of that athleticism over the past few years at Ohio State. So I think he's in the perfect situation to just become a true stud in a year. I think there's going to be a year here where he does okay. He's not a standout. In redraft, I wouldn't necessarily take him before maybe closer to the double-digit rounds. But in Dynasty, watch out in 2021.
Okay. The only thing that worries me is I wonder if this could be another Darrell Henderson pick. I don't think the Rams are happy with the way Henderson looked in that first year to take over for Gurley. That's why they drafted Akers. So I don't know if Dobbins, we could be talking about Dobbins in the same light as we do Darrell Henderson this next year. So just throwing that out there. I don't feel 100% confident about this pick, but I do feel he's number 3 in this situation. And it's definitely worth the risk because he could be very, very special in 2021 in that offense.
Yeah, I don't think I know he got spiked up there at the end, towards the end of the last draft season last year, but I don't know how many people were taking Darrell Henderson number 3 overall in their Dynasty League drafts. I think coming out of Memphis, you had a little bit more unknown about the level of competition Darrell Henderson was facing versus what J.K. Dobbins saw at Ohio State. I think the big difference I see between those two players is even if they were the same caliber of athlete, which I believe Dobbins is a far superior athlete, but even if they were the same, you're operating in an offense in Baltimore that wants to run the ball and that has a quarterback like Lamar Jackson who makes it easy for the running back. I don't necessarily see that being the case with Jared Goff and the Rams, where they probably prefer to pass it, and Goff is not a threat in the run game, so they don't have the linebackers can key in on the running back in those situations. And then the other thing that I think about is the line in LA for the Rams last year took a nosedive after the year before. I think they lost some significant players on that line, and that caused Goff to not have as much time to pass, which didn't turn out as well for him. And then Gurley had a decent year, but it was obviously a combination of his knees and the line issues that was nowhere near what we saw from him in the prior few years.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that leaves me with number 4. So I prefer running backs at this stage in the draft, and this is where I think it really gets interesting. So I think the top 3 are pretty clear. But DeAndre Swift or Cam Akers, I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift. So Swift was probably right up there at the top with Taylor as far as just an overall running back prospect for me coming into Combine and into the draft. I think his receiving ability is maybe not Edwards-Helaire level, but I think it's up there. And you look at his college stats, he had 216 receiving yards last year on 24 receptions on 30 targets. So a good 7.2% target share in that offense at Georgia. He's not as natural of a pass catcher and obviously didn't have the numbers with Georgia's offense not being near what LSU's was, but he has the speed with the 4.840. He has the burst. He has the size. He's 212 pounds. I don't love the situation that he was drafted into in Detroit with Kerryon Johnson and the Lions' desire and likelihood to pass the ball with Matt Stafford if he's healthy again this year. It's not good. It's not the Chiefs by any means, but I think there's potential there for him to become a good running back that you can rely on for a lot of years. And I don't think they'll necessarily be right away with Kerryon there, but I think that there's certainly potential for him to pay off this draft position. And he was taken with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. So you talk about where Edwards-Helaire went. DeAndre Swift was not far behind.
Yeah, that's true. I'm with you. That would be an easy number 4 pick in this situation. I'm not a big fan of the situation, mainly because of Kerryon Johnson, and I do think Johnson will still have a big role at Detroit. But when Matt Stafford was healthy last year, and I think it was like for the first 8 or 9 weeks, they were pretty good. They had a good offense. I know they lost a few close games, but they were in pretty much every game in the first 8 or 9 weeks. And if everybody stays healthy, they could have a pretty good team. Swift, yeah, I think it all depends on Kerryon Johnson. If Johnson gets hurt, then Swift would probably be a great fantasy play. But just having Johnson there kind of takes away some of his value, and they'll probably be there. Both of them will still be there in 2021. So even in Dynasty, I don't think it'd be a great pick. That's why I picked Dobbins ahead of him. And I don't think it was so easy to pick Dobbins over Swift, because those two are kind of interchangeable. I mean, if you asked me yesterday, I probably would have picked Swift. So it was pretty close to a toss-up for me between those two. Swift, I think he's a better overall running back than J.K. Dobbins. But like I said, the situation that he's in, and Jason Huntley, he was drafted later on in the draft, and he's a heck of a receiving back. If they use him like they used Theo Riddick years ago in that type of role, that takes away the catches from Swift and Johnson. So you can't really make up you can't say Swift could be like the receiving back when Huntley could be getting touches too. So Huntley is another reason why I dropped down Swift a little bit. So but I do think it is an easy number 4 pick in this draft. So once again, good pick.
Thank you. I don't think you spend that kind of draft capital on a running back if they were completely comfortable with what they had in Kerryon Johnson. So I certainly expect Swift to get a significant share of the work out of that backfield this season. Huntley may cut into that a little bit. It'll be interesting to see. You mentioned him. We may get to him in a later round of this mock draft, but coming out of New Mexico State, he's certainly an interesting prospect. Mm-hmm. Pick number 5, Brent. Who's it going to be?
This is a tough one. Now, this one kind of depends on your team. If you want to go a receiver here and you need receiver help, you might want to go receiver. But if you are good everywhere, like my fantasy teams are, where I'm just strong at every position, so I would probably go running back, because you can never have enough running backs. So obviously at this position, at this point, I'm taking Cam Akers. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of Cam Akers, but with the situation that he's in, they want him to be the guy. They drafted him to be the guy. Obviously, they're not too high on Darrell Henderson anymore, or else they wouldn't be drafting Akers. They do have Malcolm Brown there. He could pose a threat to take away some carries. But Cam Akers played with a horrible line at Florida State. I think he'll be the guy right away, with a little bit of Malcolm Brown sprinkled in, and with a little bit of Darrell Henderson sprinkled in as well. It just depends on the Rams' offense. Are they going to have a good offense where he's going to succeed and get easy touchdowns? I don't know. They weren't too good last year. But Cam Akers would be my pick at number 5.
Yeah, Cam Akers, I think, is the last of the 5 easy top backs in this class. And I think you're right to pick him. I think running backs accrue value more quickly, especially in dynasty leagues, than receivers typically do, especially if they're in a position like Cam Akers is, where they can be the lead back. He's got the size to do it at 217 pounds. He's fast, 4.47 40. And like you said, at Florida State, he didn't have a lot to work with, and he was still able to produce. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year, behind probably one of the worst offensive lines in a Power 5 conference. Can catch the ball out of the backfield, 30 receptions last year. That's really good for a college running back. And so I think he's in a really good position to do what he can to improve that offense behind that line. And I think longer term, if they can add a piece or two to the line, the Rams have really gone all in by trading away a lot of their draft picks over the past couple of years. So it's been difficult for them to kind of get out of this hole they're in. And paying Jared Goff just ungodly amounts of money doesn't help either. But if they can make some improvements around that line over the next few years, I think he'll be in a really good position to be a productive back for a long time.
Number 6.
Right. Number 6. So with all of the top running backs off the board, my teams aren't necessarily always strong as Brent's are, apparently. It's just strong at every position. I got running backs, I got receivers, I mean, they're all just luxury picks when you're like Brent. So for me, I can't say that. So I need to not waste my valuable draft capital here. And I am going to go with CeeDee Lamb. I think there are a handful of receivers that you can debate here as far as being the first one off the board. But for me, it's pretty easy with him. He's got the size you're looking for as far as being 6'2", not real big at 198 pounds, but passable enough to get off the line if he's being pressed and enough to go up and get the ball with his athleticism. Ran a decent 40, was incredibly productive in that Oklahoma offense. You'll never guess who his best comparable is on Player Profiler. You want to guess, Brent?
Oh, I think I might have saw it. It's something pretty ridiculous, isn't it?
It's Jerry Rice.
That's what it was. Yep, I saw that.
He turned out to be pretty decent, I think.
Yeah, not bad. I think I've heard of him.
I think with the number 6 pick in this draft, I will be happy to take the next Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
You want CeeDee Lamb last 2 years at Oklahoma over 1,000 yards. This year, 1,327 yards. Broke out at age 19, 81st percentile. Had a 38.1% dominator rating, 76th percentile. He, from a young age, was very productive in college, and that speaks well to his potential as an NFL receiver. The comp to Jerry Rice doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. Didn't he win the Blitnikoff Award not last year, but the year before?
Last year, you're correct. It was Jamar Chase. Was it the year before CeeDee Lamb won it?
He might have. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, he's been good at Oklahoma for several years now. Dallas, they have. I really like Michael Gallup still, so I'm not giving up on Gallup. Amari Cooper, not giving up on him. But CeeDee Lamb can still have a good year with those guys at the helm. And, I mean, it might not be great fantasy-wise, but I would still pick CeeDee Lamb number 6. That position that you're in right there, to pick the first group of receivers, that's tough because I see about 4 receivers that are very, very similar. I would first probably try to trade down and maybe make my choice a little bit easier, and then maybe get a little something extra while you're at it. But CeeDee Lamb, that's a good pick. I can't give you any crap about taking him because he's going to be good at Dallas. I think this group of receivers that I'm looking at here are going to be pretty decent.
Yeah, you feel good if you get one of those guys. CD did not win the Blitnikoff. The year before it was another receiver who we'll get to, Jerry Jeudy in 2018.
Okay, I knew it was somebody in this year's draft class.
James Washington won in 2017. And 2016, D.D. Westbrook, another Oklahoma receiver.
Maybe I got Westbrook and Jeudy mixed up.
Yeah, so short term, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of competition in Dallas between Amari and Michael Gallup, but I think there's enough targets left there. I mean, we got Jason Witten is finally gone, so I mean that frees up like a bunch of targets over the middle for somebody. So thank God he's finally out of there. That was rough to watch the past few years, but I think there's plenty of opportunity there for CD, and maybe this first year he isn't a wide receiver 2 or better, but I think longer term he's certainly in a great spot with Dak, tethered to Dak Prescott in Dallas, to be a big producer for a long time.
You ready for number 7?
Lucky number 7. Let's hear it.
This might shock you a little, but it's not Jerry Jeudy. It's his old teammate Henry Ruggs for the Las Vegas Raiders. I got to get used to saying Las Vegas Raiders. So the reason why I like Ruggs is hearing Gruden and Mayock talk about Ruggs. They said the biggest thing that they like about him was that he was an extremely smart football player. And you got to be smart to be a wide receiver. And not only is he smart, he's ridiculously fast. So if Carr can get him the ball, he can have a great fantasy year.
That's a big if.
Well, they got Mariota if that doesn't work out, which that's another big if too. But I don't know. They're kind of my surprise team this year overall. And I think if the Raiders offense gets going, I think Ruggs will be a big part of it. They do have a great offensive line. So their run game will be rolling. Josh Jacobs is going to have another good year. And that's just going to open up the passing game. And with Ruggs' speed and his smarts and his route running ability, I think he can have a really good year in fantasy. I don't know if I'd pick him above Lamb. I might need to see some reports at a training camp to do that. But I do think it's a pretty safe pick at number 7.
This may be our first big disagreement. I mean, if Jerry Jones was drinking the Johnny Walker after he picked CeeDee Lamb, I know the Raiders were happy to draft Ruggs, but I'm not nearly as happy if I'm a fantasy owner to draft him. He has incredible athleticism. There's no doubt about it with his speed and his burst. And you watch him during their games, it's clear he's just on a different level from the rest of the players on the field. But I don't know why he wasn't able to translate that into more production at Alabama. You had Jerry Jeudy there, certainly. You had Devontae Smith there, who could be a top pick in next year's draft. And you had Jalen Waddle there.
They have like four basically first rounders, or probably 4 first rounders there, sharing between all of them. So go ahead.
And there's something to be said for that, but I don't understand why, if he's going to be productive in the NFL, he's going to be surrounded by a lot of similar talents. I mean, he's going to be in Vegas where they don't have a lot of options at receiver, as we saw in the draft. They took him and Bryan Edwards and the guy from Kentucky whose name escapes me at the moment, who is going to play running back, Lynn Bowden. Yeah. So they took a lot of playmakers, and there's certainly opportunity for Henry Ruggs, but he wasn't able to translate that opportunity in college. He wasn't necessarily dynamic. He didn't return punts or kicks. They had Jalen Waddle do that, who is probably just as fast and apparently more elusive, or at least has a different skill set to be able to do that. And so that's what I would have liked to have seen out of Ruggs in college, was just either being more productive as a receiver or being able to do different things on the field that demonstrate how he can translate that athleticism into production, and especially fantasy production. I think he helps NFL. He'll help the Raiders a lot just by being able to stretch the field and open up those underneath routes for a Lynn Bowden or for Darren Waller or somebody else, Bryan Edwards potentially, to take some of those underneath targets. I just don't like the pairing with Carr. I don't think Carr likes to throw it deep, and I don't necessarily like that Ruggs wasn't more productive in college. And so there are some other receivers. I don't hate Ruggs. I just don't like him at this pick.
Okay. I bet I made your number 8 pick pretty easy then.
You didn't, actually.
I didn't. Okay.
Because you mentioned that group of 4, and Ruggs was not in that group of 4 for me, so I still have 3 other receivers out there.
Okay.
But I do think that this one you probably have to – I really debate on the next 2, so we'll see who you take. But I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson. So he was taken by the Vikings with the 22nd pick in the draft. Great draft capital. He's got good size at 6 foot, 202 pounds. Incredible speed for his size of 4.4340. He's not Henry Ruggs, but he ain't slow. And so he's going to be able to slide right into that Stephon Diggs role that he just vacated and work out of the slot. We saw what he could do alongside other talented receivers at LSU last year. Unlike Henry Ruggs, he was able to produce with a lot of talent around him, including the Biletnikoff winner. 1,540 yards. Granted, LSU threw for 6,000 yards last year, so that's only about a quarter, but his dominator rating was 30%. He had just an incredible year, came out of nowhere as a 2-star out of high school, worked his butt off to get to where he's been at, and was able to produce at a young age. He broke out at age 19. His best comparable, Reggie Wayne, one of your players near and dear to your heart. Maybe you should have taken a shot on Mr. Jefferson. So I think he's in a great position. I don't think the Vikings want to throw the ball a ton, but I think there's a lot of opportunity available there with Diggs being gone, with Thielen getting older, with having the opportunity to work out a slot across the middle of the field. I think he landed in the perfect spot.
I agree with you. Good route runner, fast, good athleticism, great story coming from a 2-star to a first rounder. He's in a great position. He's only competing for targets with Adam Thielen and maybe Rudolph and Irv Smith, really. But yeah, I do like him. I was debating on picking him. Honestly, I really thought I'd be getting him with my next pick, but he kind of shocked me with this one. But yeah, I really do like him. And the only thing that worries me is he had a great receiver on the opposite side of him, which maybe left him open in college. And he had a pretty good quarterback too. His name escapes me. So no, but Joe Burrow, he had a really good quarterback in Joe Burrow, which I think might have helped with Chase's success and Jefferson's success too.
Joe.
It'll be interesting to see how Chase does next year without Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah. See, that's what I go back to with Ruggs is he had a great quarterback and he had great receivers who left him in a lot of potentially one-on-one situations. Yeah, and just contrasting that with what Jefferson was able to do, it just makes it hard for me to pull the trigger on Ruggs that really. But I'll stop beating up your pick over there, Brent.
You know I'm really going to give you a lot of crap if Ruggs just goes off in the first couple weeks.
That might become a bit. That's a risk I'm willing to take, though.
Okay. All right. Ready for number 9?
Yep, let's hear it.
This one is pretty easy. I thought you'd take him with this last pick. I'm actually kind of shocked he fell to number 9. Probably in your average dynasty rookie draft, he'll probably be getting picked like between around 5 or 6 is my guess. But Jerry Jeudy. So I have both Alabama receivers on my team. He's a great route runner. He's probably going to be the guy by at least 2021 at Denver. The only thing that worries me is having Drew Lock as his quarterback. He's pretty inexperienced. He did show glimpses of being pretty good last year towards the end of the year. But Jerry Jeudy, great route runner, very good athleticism. I think I got a steal at number 9.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy was probably my favorite wide receiver prospect coming into last year. And then some of these other guys popped up like CeeDee Lamb. And I think it wasn't because of anything Jerry Jeudy did wrong. It was just some of this, like CeeDee Lamb landed in a great situation with an established quarterback. And Justin Jefferson has Kirk Cousins, who isn't necessarily great, but he's good enough to get him the ball. And so Jerry Jeudy, I think Drew Lock has a lot of potential, but he's still kind of an unknown at this point. Jeudy had good production last year. He's got just about everything you could want in receiver. He's got good size, good draft capital, good speed, broke out at an early age. There's nothing not to like. He's a great route runner. All the scouts rave about his ability to run routes. So he's got a lot of opportunity in Denver. They're going to be trying to score a lot of points. We could tell that from the way they went about this draft and the talent they put around Drew Lock. And I think they realized that being in a division with the Chiefs, you're going to have to be able to score points. You can't do it with defense and just running the ball. So I think Judy's in a good spot. I don't have any issues with that pick. I feel bad for Cortland Sutton. He had a great year last year, and now he's got a lot of competition. But
he does have his competition, but I think he'll be fine. He'll probably still have a little better year than last year. Like I said, Jeudy might not be the man there until 2021. So Sutton has another year left to make sure Jeudy stays at wide receiver number 2. So it's very possible that could happen too.
Yeah, and it could be good for both of them, having both of them there. It doesn't allow the defense to focus on Sutton like maybe they could last year.
They do have a lot of mouths to feed at Denver now. It's kind of Drew Lock has got his work cut out for him, trying to spread the ball between Jeudy, Sutton, Fant. Missouri tight end, Alberto. I'll call him Alberto. And then the 3 running backs with Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay, and Royce Freeman. Maybe not so much Royce Freeman, but that's a lot of mouths to feed at Denver. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think you have certain players like Judy and Cortland Sutton whose talent is established and who are going to get theirs, and then it's more of the marginal type players who are still good but aren't elite, who are going to be fighting over the scraps. So it'll be interesting. Certainly, Denver's added a lot to that offense over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
At number 10, I'm going to stick with receiver.
So we're going 5 running backs and then 5 receivers.
I guess we're keeping it boring. I am going to take Jalen Reagor. So Reagor went to a great spot in Philadelphia with the 21st pick. We saw what happened last year. I think maybe, Brent, you could have got on the field at receiver for them by the end of last year with who they were trotting out there.
Yeah.
And, last year, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was, I think, a second-round pick for them. And despite all of those injuries they had last year and the lack of pass-catching options, he still wasn't able to produce. I think Jalen Reagor won't have that problem. He's a tremendous athlete, a 4.47 40, good size at 5'11 and 206. He walks into a ton of opportunity there. They've thrown the ball to the tight end so much recently out of necessity, I think, with Ertz and Goddard. But I think Jalen Reagor's in a great position to be able to take some of that and produce. He went to TCU. Speaking of horrible quarterback play, Jalen Reagor had some of the worst last year, and he was still able to really get some production. He didn't have a ton of yards, only 611, but the year before he was over 1,000. He broke out at age 18.7, 95th percentile. So I think with more than capable quarterback play from Carson Wentz, if he's able to stay healthy, Jalen Reagor is set up very well to be very productive right away. And he is actually, I think, the one I was debating with over Justin Jefferson last time. So
wow,
I may have him above Judy when we publish our rookie ranks on the website.
Wow. Okay. I'm not as high as him as you are. He was good in college. Great return guy. He'll probably return kicks at Philadelphia. But like you said last year, the wide receiver position for them, it wasn't great. They were playing guys off the street, but to my knowledge, they're healthy and or else getting healthy. And I mean, you have Arcega-Whiteside, which I'm not for sure how you pronounce that name. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. They just traded for Marquise Goodwin from the 49ers. They drafted Hightower from Boise State. And Greg Ward was one of those guys last year that actually played really good for them towards the end of the year. He was one of those receivers that signed off the street. I think he's got a role there too. And Ertz and Goddard playing tight end. Now, we were just talking about Denver, about them spreading the ball around and trying to make everybody happy. That's even more. So, and I think Judy's a lot that much better than Jalen Reagor. So I don't know. I think it might be interesting to see how Reagor does for the Eagles and see how Ruggs does for the Raiders. So it might be kind of fun.
You are giving these guys way too much credit. Jalen Reagor was taken in the first round, and you're telling me Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who didn't do anything last year, are going to be competition for this guy?
I get it with Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, we can throw him out. Still, there's quite a bit of competition. I'm not saying that he's not going to play, that these guys are going to beat him out. But Greg Ward did really good, and he's going to be ahead of him at the start of the year. I mean, Reagor's going to have to work hard to beat him out. Maybe I'm just not as high on Reagor as you are coming out of college, So it'll be fun to see how this folds.
It
You know,
will.
Mark. They traded for Goodwin, and Goodwin could be the Goodwin and Deshaun Jackson could be the deep guys, and Jeffrey, if he's healthy, he'll be his usual number one guy. Ertz and Goddard. I mean, those guys will get their touches. Ertz will for sure, and Goddard's up and coming.
Ertz and Goddard will definitely get targets. There's no doubt. Alshon Jeffrey has a role. If he can stay healthy, he's going to get some targets. I fully believe that. And I think Deshaun Jackson has a role as well if he can stay healthy. But those guys have not demonstrated the ability to stay healthy in recent years. Deshaun Jackson's going 33, 34 at this point.
Yeah.
Alshon's not far behind. Goodwin, I view as kind of interchangeable with with Deshaun, as far as just providing that deep threat role that opens up underneath for Ertz, Goddard, and now potentially Jalen Reagor to get some targets. So I think Jalen Reagor has a lot more opportunity than you apparently do. I don't see Greg Ward as a threat at all, to be honest.
Okay.
I would be surprised if everybody's healthy, if Arcega-Whiteside gets any significant level of targets. So I think with Carson Wentz and his ability, I think Carson Wentz is a good quarterback, and I think that Reagor has an opportunity there to go in and lock down a role in that offense, and I think that could be a good offense if Alshon and Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson are able to stay healthy and help provide a few more weapons for Wentz alongside Reagor this year. We'll see. That might be the second biggest debate after Ruggs this year. One to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the odds of Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson being healthy for the whole year, it's not good. They've proven to us that they can't do that recently as they get older. I'm not going to say Reagor is not going to have a role, and he very well could jump over Greg Ward and play over him, which, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking. But you can't discount Greg Ward. He played pretty good, and plus Carson Wentz. This all depends on Carson Wentz staying healthy too, which he's shown to us the last couple of years that he can't finish the season. So he's a great quarterback. I'll give him that, but he's had trouble finishing seasons, and luckily they had Foles to win a Super Bowl for him. They did draft Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is not as good as Carson Wentz. So that brings down everybody on that offense's value in fantasy.
I pulled up Greg Ward's stats.
All right.
How many yards did Greg Ward have last year?
250.
Great guess. 254. One touchdown on 28 catches. Okay. You know what his best game was?
What was it?
4 catches for 71 yards.
Huh. Well, it was one of his first years. You got to realize in college he played quarterback, so he's just learning the wide receiver position. So
you know who didn't play quarterback in college and isn't just learning the wide receiver position? Jalen Reagor. All right. And who was a first-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want him. They're going to want Reagor to be their guy, and we'll see if he ends up being their guy.
We will. We'll keep an eye on him and Ruggs this year. All right, 11th pick.
Yes. By the way, I did have Reagor on number 10 on my list. So
I mean, you're talking down my guy, and you have him in the same slot.
I did. But you were talking about maybe drafting him at number 8. So, all right, number 11, Joe Burrow. We'll draft a quarterback now. Usually don't like drafting quarterbacks unless you really need one in Dynasty. But Joe Burrow, I feel like he has the opportunity to be pretty good in fantasy. Maybe not quite as good as the Bengals might not be quite as good as a team for this first year. But I do think he can have some pretty good fantasy numbers. He does have some weapons. Joe Mixon, I feel, if he's healthy, he could be one of the best running backs in the NFL. And that's huge for a rookie for a rookie quarterback to have a running back like Joe Mixon. If AJ Green stays around and if he stays healthy, he has one of the best receivers in the league. Tyler Boyd has come on recently. T. Higgins is a young rookie. He has some weapons. And Joe Burrow, as we saw him play against the SEC defenses, he can make plays and he can look extremely good out there. And he made, in my opinion, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson better than what they actually look like. So maybe he can be close to that in the NFL. We'll see. But I'm taking a chance at him, especially at number 11.
Yeah, I have no issues with that pick. I mean, he doesn't have Greg Ward to throw to, but he does have some other weapons. It'll be really interesting for me to see whether he can do in the NFL what he was able to do in college or even come close to it. He had the 1 year at LSU as a senior, a fifth-year senior, 23 years old, where he actually put up stats that were able to get him the number 1 pick. I mean, good for Joe. I mean, go get your money, but it's not like a Tua or a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields when he comes out next year, probably, where they have multiple years of progression that you can see is a clear step up and that they were productive all of those years despite changes in personnel around them and despite, I mean, you think it was him that was making Chase and Jefferson better and Hilaire, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was them making him better and propping him up. It's really just hard to say because we only have that 1 year. And I think it's very possible that he could be a very good NFL quarterback for a long time. It's just a really tough thing to determine at this point because of the lack of more than 1 year of production. So I wouldn't necessarily take him here unless I needed a quarterback, kind of like you alluded to. But if you do need that quarterback, I don't think you're way out of line in doing so.
Where would you pick him in a Superflex league?
Probably top 3 for sure. Quarterbacks in most Superflex leagues are number 1 pick, and I think he's going as that in most Superflex leagues, but I tend to value running backs a little more, and I would have a hard time deciding between him and the top 2 backs.
Yeah, for me, I in Superflex, I'd probably be I'm debating right now either Burrow or Edwards-Helaire. So, I mean, a lot would depend on my team. If I wasn't good at quarterback in a Superflex, I would definitely take Burrow. Yeah. But if I felt good about my quarterbacks, I'd probably take Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. Or maybe Taylor. If you have options, trade down to number 3 and get whichever one falls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Joe does in Cincinnati.
Yep. I'm interested in this number 12 pick.
Yeah, this is where things start to get dicey.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go 5 quarterbacks in a row if you want to keep our pattern going. I think I'm going to go with Keyshawn Vaughn at the number 12 pick. So this one's close for me, but I think he landed in a really good situation in Tampa Bay. He's got to compete with Ronald Jones and Dare Ogunbowale as his competition for touches there alongside Tom Brady and what's likely to be a pretty good offense, I would think, with Mike Evans, with Gronk coming back, with Chris Godwin, who lit things up last year and took his game to the next level. You've got Keyshawn Vaughn, who was very productive at Vanderbilt. He is a little older at age 23, so you're getting 1 or 2 less years of productivity potentially over the course of his career compared to a lot of the guys who come out after 3 years. But that was because he transferred from Illinois to Vanderbilt because Lovie Smith didn't recognize what he had apparently. But he's going to have an opportunity to play alongside Tom Brady. He's a good receiver. He caught 28 passes last year. He's got good speed. He ran for over 1,000 yards each of the past 2 years at Vanderbilt against SEC defenses on teams that were not very good and could stack the box because he was easily the best weapon they had on offense at Vanderbilt. So I think that speaks really well to him. His best comparable on Player Profiler is Dalvin Cook. Don't mind that. Wow. So I think he's in a good situation. I think Ronald Jones hasn't shown me anything to this point that would lead me to believe that he's going to be hard to overtake as the lead back. Same for Dare Ogunbowale. I think that Keyshawn Vaughn can catch passes just as well or better than him. And so when you need somebody to protect Father Time, Tom Brady in the pocket, the statue back there, Ronald Jones has had some issues with pass protection in the past. And if Keyshawn Vaughn can provide that for Tom Brady, I think he has an opportunity to get on the field really early. I can see a situation where maybe Ronald Jones starts out the year as the starter, misses a block, and Tom Brady just looks at the sideline and is like, hey, get this guy the heck out of here. And in comes Keyshawn Vaughn. So I think there's certainly opportunity there for him in Tampa, and I like the situation that he landed in.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Can't argue much with that. That's probably would be my pick too. I would maybe debate with one or two other guys, but that is a good pick. I can't complain. I haven't watched him a lot at Vanderbilt. Obviously, I'm not going to go watch Vanderbilt on a Saturday when I could be watching the Huskers and and some other good college football powerhouses. But I do remember, and this stuck with me ever since, watching the NFL draft. When he got drafted, I can't remember who said it, but they said that he's the best pass blocking running back in the draft. And when you have that title, and when you have Tom Brady as a quarterback, that shows that you're probably going to play. The only thing that worries me, I mean, Ronald Jones, doesn't worry me. I mean, he showed a little bit of glimpses at times last year, but I think Vaughn can easily beat him out. But the only thing that worries me if someone like Devontae Freeman gets picked up by Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that'll totally throw a wrench in your Keyshawn Vaughn plans. Can't remember who else is out there as a free agent, but I'm sure there's a few other guys that can probably be put in that same sentence with Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, that is a risk. I mean, the Bucs are clearly in win now mode with Tom Brady. Yeah. So,
yep. And I guess Freeman, I mean, has an injury history, so if they do end up getting him, he might not be able to finish out the year. So you still have Keyshawn Vaughn there, but yeah, I think as of right now, Vaughn will probably be the guy to beat out. I think, like you said, Ronald Jones might start out the year, and once he misses that block, which we know he will it be week 1? Will it be week 2? It'll probably be week 1. But then Vaughn will be coming in, and he'll be getting his touches and probably getting a lot of catches from Brady too. So that's an interesting play there, and good pick. I can't complain about it.
Thank you. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. So that was the first round. We'll probably do the second round maybe next episode. We will see, but something to look forward to on a future podcast. So, Brent, nice job. You'll let me know when you change your mind on Ruggs, and I'll let you know when I change my mind on Rager.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's move on to our next segment. Today we're going to be throwing out the Fantasy Lifeline to Chris G on Twitter. So Chris tweeted out a question that I thought was really interesting, Brent. He said, when someone agrees to a fantasy trade verbally and tells you it is a done deal but hasn't hit the accept button, is it bad faith to then accept another offer instead? What do you think?
Good question, Chris G. It is probably okay if you verbally let them know and give them your explanation. It'd probably be bad faith if you tell them that it's a done deal and then you, without talking to them again or whatever, text or whatever you're doing, it probably would be bad faith just to accept another trade offer. But if you're stuck in that situation, I'd say it's okay if you talk to them. Communication's important. Communication's key for a lot of things in life. and I'm sure the other trade partner, it won't be the end of that guy's world. At least I don't think it will be. If you decide to not accept that trade, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, when you say, yes, I accept that, and you shake hands verbally or physically, it's a done deal. It's a formality putting it on the website and hitting the accept button. And I think if you try to back out of a trade after you say we have a deal, that's a slime ball move, and I would probably never trade with you again. That's my 2 cents.
What if they try to communicate it with you and say, hey, I just just listen to this. So just so you're in the situation, someone offers you third round. Someone's offering you Henry Ruggs for
no deal
for a future third round pick. I would hope that you would take that. Okay. And then you go home on your computer and you see Jalen Reagor is getting offered for that lovely third rounder that you have. You're not gonna try calling that guy and say, hey, I like this other guy a lot better, or I like this other player a lot better, and I'd want to let you know that I'm thinking about taking this offer, and just gotta let you understand. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
That doesn't really change much for me, honestly. Like, I think if you tell someone you have a deal, you have a deal. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm from the Midwest in a small town, and I think that's how a lot of deals get done in small towns, is you shake somebody's hand and you look them in the eye and you say, I'll do that, and then you do it. I think it's as simple as that, and I think that builds a lot of goodwill and goes a long way.
I agree.
If you want to have a good reputation, I think you follow through on your word when you give it, even if you do get a better deal later.
Obviously, this happened with Chris G. I don't think it would happen a lot, because I mean, if someone is there, I mean, you can get 4G internet everywhere. I'd probably say, hey, let's just accept the trade right now on the computer so we can get this finalized.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I assume everybody would do, but I get your reasoning. Makes you look like a better guy than me, so thanks a lot there.
The listeners already know it's the first real episode, and I know who they want to trade with, and it is not Brent. Chris, get the deal accepted as soon as possible. Don't let it hang out there for days, but in the meantime, just stick to your word. All right, the next segment, grade the trade. So if you want to have your Fantasy Lifeline question answered, send it to us on Twitter, or better yet, leave us a voicemail. If you leave us a voicemail, and the link is in the description on this show, you go straight to the top of the list, and we'll also grade your trade if you want to submit a trade. Today, Brent is going to grade my trade because we don't have any listener submitted ones to grade yet. So the trade that I made was in a recent Superflex startup. It's a 12-team league. We were doing the startup draft, and the guy behind me in the draft wanted to have 3 picks in a row. So he offered me, or what we ended up agreeing to at least, was that I would give him pick 8, the second pick of the 8th round, 8.02. And he gave me the last pick of the 13th round, so 13.12, which 2 picks short of being a 6th round trade down. And then he also gave me his first round pick for 2021. So Brent, I guess we'll say if you were grade my trade, so how do you think I did in that trade, getting 13.12 and the 2021 first for the 8.02?
Well, to grade your trade, I'd have to give you an A. Nice job.
Hey.
The reason for that is you get next year's first round draft pick, and you don't know where this guy's going to end up. It could be the first pick, and you could be getting Trevor Lawrence in a Superflex league.
Please.
This could be the worst trade ever for Scott's Tots or this other person that you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is the Scranton Superflex. So all the teams are, or not all of them, but most of them are named after references from The Office. And so the team I traded was Scott's Tots. I am the Scranton Strangler, naturally, because I'm going to strangle every team I face this year.
The theme is great, by the way. I love it. I love The Office.
You want to tell everybody your team name, Brent?
I am the party planning committee.
Yes.
And there's some good names. We got Shut Up Toby.
Bob Vance Refrigeration.
Yes, that's hilarious. that's good.
We got Henrietta the Porcupine.
Mm-hmm.
We got Nard Pups.
Yeah, it's
Threat Level Midnight.
It's hilarious. But yeah, you definitely get an A.
Yeah, buddy.
I mean, basically just because that first round pick. So I mean, if you actually put in the players that you guys actually drafted, maybe you might be able to see who's getting drafted where. But at 8.2, Evan Ingram was the person who got drafted. And at 13.12, Curtis Samuel. Now, I agree that Evan Ingram is better to have than Curtis Samuel. And this is not a tight end premium league, though. So Ingram isn't that much better than Samuel, especially not a whole first-round draft pick better than Samuel.
Especially when he plays half the year.
Yeah. I mean, has he ever finished a full year? I don't think he has. I don't think he's ever played more than 75% of the years in his first couple years. Not the year. I don't think he's played over 75% of the year in his first couple years. So I think it's a great trade for you. Even if I don't like Curtis Samuel that much, I just don't like Evan Ingram that much either. So, but you getting that first round draft pick, that could be Trevor Lawrence, that could be Travis Etienne, could be
Justin
Fields, could be Chuba Hubbard. That's Jamar Chase. Yeah, it's going to be another good draft next year, and you got yourself a steal with that. So, congrats. You got an A. Scott's Tots. It's a D, but possibly an F if that becomes the first pick. That's definitely an F. So there's my thoughts on it.
So the owner of Scott's Tots is our friend Colin, who listens to this podcast, and he might cry when he hears Teacher Brent giving him a D or an F for his first trade in this league.
Yes. So, wow. Okay, that shocked me when I saw that. So, I'm glad we brought it up today.
And I didn't take advantage of anybody. Colin has been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football longer than I have. He knows what he's doing. So, this was fair. Well, depending on your perspective, it was a trade between two willing parties, I guess, that we agreed to. So, I was going to say fair, but based on Brent's grade, I don't know how fair it was.
The only thing that I think that could have got him a little excited is, I don't know if you've ever drafted 3 draft picks in a row, but he got to draft 3 draft picks in a row because of that. So that's pretty cool, because whenever I'm up to draft, I have like 3 guys that I have in mind. So he was able to draft all 3 guys that he had in mind. So
he had that adrenaline going. Like that's what you do in the drafts, is you just wait for somebody else to make a mistake. You wait for them to take Henry Ruggs at the 7th pick, and then you swoop in and you grab Justin Jefferson right behind him, far superior player, and that's how you win your leagues, Brent. That's how you go from losing in the championship 4 years in a row to winning.
We'll see about that.
All right. Well, I appreciate the A, Teach.
No problem.
Mr. Hikus, giving out A's to this podcast co-host here. All right. So now that I've got my shiny new A, it's party time in the club. All right. Let's wish a very happy birthday to these fantasy studs over the next, well, some of them are studs, some of them are garbage.
Yeah.
First, we'll start with the stud. Big Mac, the Mac Daddy, Christian McCaffrey turns 24 on June 7th.
24. He's got a good few years left, or a few, maybe 5-6 years till he gets 30. So as long as the Panthers don't beat him to death by giving him the ball 35 times a game, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, it's impressive. He's the number one player in the game, consensus.
Yeah. Yep.
So happy birthday to Christian. I have you in 2 leagues right now, so keep it
Nice.
going. Very happy birthday. Brent, do you want to give another birthday shout out to our next player?
You give me Sam Darnold. you get Christian McCaffrey, and I get Sam Darnold. Okay.
I gave you a pick of there are 3. Do not lie to the listeners, Brent. There are 3 more birthdays on this list. Sam Darnold happens to be the next one on the list.
True.
But you could have picked any of the 3.
Good point. But I've already said it. So Sam Darnold, New York Jets quarterback, in case you don't know, turns 23 on June 5th. Still pretty young.
Yeah.
This is his 3rd year in the NFL?
I think that's right.
Okay.
Because last year was his 2nd. Because he's the same as Lamar Jackson, same class.
Okay. Yeah. He came in. He came in young and 23 years old. He's got plenty of time to improve.
Yeah. Stay away from the groupies, Sam. I know it's your birthday, but you don't want to get mono again. At least this time it wouldn't be in the middle of the season.
Yep.
How do you feel about Sam Darnold? Do you like him as a player?
He's okay. He's not on any of my teams, so I don't love him. But I have a feeling in some of my best balls that I'll be doing this summer, I might have him in a few of my teams. So we'll see. I don't hate him. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of like he's always had a lot of interceptions, and that kind of turned me off when he came out from USC, and it hasn't really gotten any better in the NFL. So he is still very young. He could certainly improve, but I'm not real high on him either. Brent, do you want me to take the good one or the bad one of the birthday shout-outs that are left?
It's up to you.
How much are you going to complain if I leave you with the bad one?
I won't complain. But even though one of these guys is probably my second favorite player in the NFL.
Well, I'll take the bad one so little Brent can give a birthday shout-out to his favorite player. All right, so David Montgomery turns 23 on June 7th. So happy birthday, David. I'm sorry your NFL career isn't off to a better start. Last year was a little rough for you.
Yeah.
Came out of Iowa State, and everybody was expecting big things. You had a great opportunity in front of you, and
it wasn't a very good year for him. Maybe his 23rd year will be better, but if he doesn't have a very good 23rd year, I got a feeling the Bears might be looking somewhere else. Maybe Breece Hall. His replacement at Iowa State can replace him at Chicago.
That would be okay.
Yeah.
Breece Hall is not eligible until 2022, though. He was a freshman last year.
So maybe you have to wait 2 years for that then.
Yeah. Well, I have Breece Hall in our Devy League, so that's why I know that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, David Montgomery, I think – so he was going over Miles Sanders last year, which just struck me as crazy. But
I know.
People did it, and I'd never understood. And I think he's the perfect example, though, of why you take running back early, because even though he was objectively not good last year, you could still trade him for a decent receiver right now versus, like, think about his trade value versus N'Keal Harry's trade value.
Mm-hmm.
If you had taken N'Keal Harry last year, you're getting pennies on the dollar, at least with Montgomery, because he has that opportunity still this year. You're getting maybe dimes or nickels or quarters or something on the dollar. But so the running backs accrue value potentially more if they do well, and even if they don't necessarily do well, like David Montgomery, you're still retaining a little bit more value than you are with those receivers who flop the first year.
But I will say, if he has another bad year after this year, his value will be pretty low. So, I mean, this dynasty value will be good for 2-3 years for a running back like this. But
if you're not a contender, get out now.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's getting better this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either, unfortunately. I thought they got rid of Jordan Howard so they can get someone better, but I don't think Montgomery is much better than Jordan Howard. So
I agree. All right, Brent, do you want to give a birthday shout-out to your favorite player?
DeAndre Hopkins. Favorite receiver in the league. He's a stud in every which way. He's strong, great hands. He turns 28 on June 6th. So happy birthday to my favorite wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals, which is crazy. That was a shocking trade this offseason.
Yeah, it was. Bill O'Brien is, as a Titans fan, there is no coach / GM I would rather have in my division than Bill O'Brien, especially tethered to Deshaun Watson, who's objectively one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and the Texans are just ruining his prime years by having Bill O'Brien as the head coach and GM and trading away his number one receiver and not putting any real talent around him and squandering draft picks. And I feel bad for Deshaun because he's a great player, and I know they're trying to work out a long-term deal with him, but I hope he runs far, far away because they have done nothing to deserve to keep him there.
I agree.
All right, that was party time. So now we have one more shout-out before we get out of here. Brent, do you want to explain what went on here?
Yeah, Jesse Jelinik's son. Jesse Jelinik plays fantasy football with me in a few of my leagues, and we've been playing fantasy football for a very long time. His son, he is going to be a sophomore, I'm pretty sure, in high school. He has quite a few followers on TikTok. He gave us a shout out on our first podcast, which was really cool. He set up the background with our logo. He did a really good job. He talked well and everything. But we really appreciate the shout out from River Jelinek. You can go follow him at HuskerFan101. At HuskerFan101 on TikTok. He's got quite a few followers on there, and he talks a lot of college football on there.
He's way more popular than us.
Yeah, he is. Way more.
And definitely way cooler, too.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
So, thanks, River. We really appreciate it, man. You're the best. So, that brings us to the end. Thanks for listening, everybody. I said this last time, and I really do mean it. It means the world to us that you listen, and it would mean even more if you could subscribe, rate, review our podcast. We're now on Apple Podcasts, just confirmed before we recorded this episode. So I think that's the biggest podcast player platform out there. So it feels good to be on Apple. And for all of you with iPhones, that makes it easy. So go subscribe. We appreciate it. And we'll have a new episode for you next week. And every week after that, our plan is to put out one a week. And we'll try to make it just as quality as this one was. We're get 1% better every day, right, Brent?
Yep. We need more NFL news too. So hopefully some more NFL news will come out this next week.
Yeah, hopefully nothing else like Justyn Ross. I feel so bad for that guy, but
yeah.
We will take all the news we can get otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So until next week, thanks for being part of the Fantasy Players Club. On behalf of Brent Hut Hikus, this is Levi Valentine signing off. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.